Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. Very excited to be with you on our first Friday without a football weekend since like mid to late August. I don't like this feeling. The Pro Bowl flag football game. Shout out to Peyton and Eli Manning. Peyton Manning, VFL, go Vols. Nobody cares about that. Okay, it's a bunch of mostly Pro Bowl replacements or guys making their first Pro Bowl, and it's fun and all that, and the skill competition. Nobody cares about the Pro Bowl. We obviously care about the Super Bowl next week. More on the Super Bowl. Tim Barnard, the host of the brand new Boston Sports Summit podcast here on the Grid Network. He's going to be stopping by in about a half hour to talk, obviously, Boston sports. We're going to talk Celtics. What was a very confusing loss last night to the Lakers. I don't want to say JV team, but they didn't have LeBron and AD. And we know that's a very different basketball team in that respect. They were 15-point favorites and lost pretty comfortably given the opposition. Getting to that. Also, we share a love of the Red Sox. I'm wearing my Red Sox hoodie today to show some love to the Red Sox, who there's not much to show love to them for. Or, to them for, because the fact that, simply put, they have had a bumpy off season, or you could say back-to-back 2-3 straight bumpy off seasons. We did get Theo Epstein back in the ownership group. I'm curious to hear his thoughts about that, because Theo Epstein was a guy who came in. Theo Epstein has ended two long curses, the one in Boston and the one in Chicago with the Cubs. So getting to that with him later in the show. Of course, the New England Patriots turning over a new leaf, hiring Jerome Mayo. Looks like they're going to draft a quarterback, get his thoughts on that, and of course, get his thoughts on Super Bowl 58. We do have one prediction already by a guest on Carving It Up Live. It's Devin Nettles of the At the Bank Ravens podcast. Shout out to Devin. He predicts the Chiefs to win 24-17 of the 49ers. We will get Tim's thoughts later on in the show. But first, the still, I believe, face of the NBA is LeBron James, who I think shares at this point in the game, shares the face of the NBA, so to speak, with Steph Curry. I think even with the international talent that has come in and taken the league by storm, such as guys like Jokic, Giannis, Luka, Embiid, you could throw out a lot of guys. Those two guys are the biggest draw. The ratings bear it out. They are the two biggest stars, not the two best players, but the two biggest stars of the NBA regular season and even in the playoffs. They move the needle. And the Lakers have been in a bit of a weird spot. So right now at this point in the season, so they beat Boston last night, which was quite shocking given the fact that Boston had their entire team healthy. Tatum, Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, Porzingis, they had everybody healthy. And they still managed to lose to the Lakers without LeBron James, Anthony Davis. But the Lakers are sitting there right now at 25-25. They're 500. And if you look at the standings right now out west, the Lakers sitting at 25-25 are currently the 9 seed and are a full 4 games out of the play-in tournament. All right, getting to the 6 seed in order to not have to participate in the play-in tournament. So it's early February. We still have another 2.5 months left if you include, or really 2 months if you include All-Star break. Lakers are probably getting in the play-in tournament. But listen, they were in it last year. They got to the conference finals. Where are we at right now with LeBron James? Because the fact of the matter is, before this Boston Celtics game, the Lakers had lost back-to-back games with LeBron out there in late January. After beating the Warriors in double overtime, they just lost on the road badly to Houston and then on the road badly to Atlanta. And LeBron put out a tweet where it was an expiring hourglass. We'll put it that way. That's all it was, just an expiring hourglass emoji. And LeBron has sort of a history of kind of being cryptic. It's like, okay, what does he mean by this? I don't know LeBron. I'm not Rich Paul. I'm not anybody within his inner circle, Clutch Sports, or the Lakers, or anybody his family. What I do know is LeBron is not a man who is scared to speak his mind in very sort of passive-aggressive ways. I don't know what that hourglass means. It meant something. Here's what I think it, maybe not necessarily what it should mean, but what I think he should do. He should ask out of LA. He should request a trade by the Los Angeles Lakers, or from the Los Angeles Lakers rather, because the trading deadline is just 6 days away. It's next Thursday, which I don't know why the NBA doesn't have the trading deadline after the Super Bowl. It used to be that way, but now that the Super Bowl's been pushed back another week because the 18-game season, they need to adjust to that. I don't like interviewing Super Bowl coverage, but the point of all that is, if you're sitting there and you're LeBron James, you're thinking, okay, I am in year 21. I am, by the way, this is not hyperbole, the oldest player in the NBA. Literally the oldest. After Iguodala retired from my Warriors, shout out Andre Iguodala, Faye the Inverse on the line. I want that man taking the last shot. And Udonis Haslem retiring. LeBron's the oldest player in the league. And, he's just sitting back. The old man's got gray in his beard. And LeBron James is averaging 24.9 points per game, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, and shooting 52% from the field. By the way, LeBron having a great three-point shooting season by his standards. He's shooting 39.7%, so basically give him 40% from three-point range. That's a career high. So LeBron, and by the way, against perimeter players this season, I think I saw a stat like LeBron is, you look at the analytics, the best perimeter defender in basketball. So he's still defending at a pretty high level, scoring efficiently, getting guys involved, active on the defensive end. I'm still honest to God believe he's a top 5 player in the league. He's still doing these things at a very high level. And he's playing on a team, it's like, it doesn't make sense. Anthony Davis is having one of the better seasons of his career. He's averaging a double-double night to night. I call him Coin Flip Davis. Coin's pretty much been stuck on heads right now for a while now, and I believe in heads more than tails. But, that said, AD's playing great. The roster, you saw last night, it's a good roster. It's the very reason I picked the Lakers to finish as a top 3 seed in the West and to continue the momentum they had from last season. But the Lakers have three major issues. LeBron has 3 major reasons why he should lead the Lakers. The first one is the Lakers have had poor management, and I've talked about this many times on my show. In the last couple of years, the Lakers have had bad management really since Dr. Jerry Buss passed away in, I think that was 2013. So we're 11 years post that. And you could say, well, they got a title. Yeah, they had LeBron James at his peak with peak Anthony Davis, peak condition, focused Anthony Davis. It was a veteran team in the bubble, well-coached Frank Vogel. I don't believe there's an asterisk next to that championship the way a lot of people do. That was one of the hardest championships ever won. Not the hardest, one of the hardest. And I'd say that whoever won the championship, right? So they've gotten a title, and they got to the Western Conference Finals last year. Aside from that, it's been either truly unwatchable basketball in the last few years of Kobe's career and then the last couple of years after that, or it's been mediocre basketball. I mean, that by definition, their record is mediocre. They're 25-25. LeBron is still playing at this level in year 21, but even LeBron last year, remember that press conference he had after the Denver Nuggets swept the Lakers? And he openly, this is the first time he's ever openly posed the thought of, this might be it. This might be it for me. And we were all like, oh my God, is LeBron actually going to retire? And he decided no. And he had that SB speech like, I'm coming back. He's still playing at this level. You're telling me he's going to waste it on a team that I still think can get to the playoffs. I still believe, frankly, is a contender. But they're not well coached with Darvin Ham. His my man Barry Grett Jr. will go into the detail about this far better than I could because he's a Lakers fan. He watches every dribble of every game. But his rotational decisions, his lack of adjustment making, comes from the Budenholzer tree in that regard, is unspeakably bad. Lakers front office, horrible. Horrible. They have not, think about this, ladies and gentlemen. LeBron played 7 years in Cleveland. Sorry, 11 years in Cleveland if you combine the first 7 years and the 4 years he spent when he came back. They were a championship contender. Take out the first few years of LeBron's career when he was a kid, almost all of them. Now, does that mean they were a good enough team back in those days? 07, that team should not have been in the finals. LeBron's greatness got them there, and their defense, Mike Brown. But by and large, they were competing for titles. They were competing to win the Eastern Conference. You're telling me in a Western Conference where Denver is I think the team to be. I've said that from the jump. Don't care that they're the 3 seed right now. They're better than everybody. When healthy, they're better than everybody out west and maybe in basketball. But Clippers, we don't trust them. Minnesota, a lot of people buy Minnesota, love Anthony Edwards. That's about all I love. Don't trust Cat. Don't trust Chris Finch. And the Timberwolves have a history, let's be honest, of kind of screwing it up. The Thunder, we all love them, but they're a little too young. I mean, you start looking at Phoenix, don't trust them because they don't have a true point guard, and I don't think they can get a stop consistently, and there's some health concerns there. The West, outside of Denver, the West is as open as ever. And the Lakers in the 9 seed, 25-25, with by and large, a fully healthy LeBron all season long to this point, knock on wood for him, and a fully healthy Anthony Davis to this point, knock on wood for him as well. And they're still mediocre. They're still just kind of middle of the pack. They're fine. You don't want to play them in the first round by any means. I mean, Denver would beat them, but I don't think Denver wants to play the Lakers in the first round. Poor management has gotten them to this stage. The Lakers have been title contenders, I believe, twice since LeBron James has been in a Lakers uniform. The year they won the championship and last year. I think last year, if a couple different plays go their way in that Nuggets series, maybe the Lakers get to the finals, and by definition, you get to the finals, you're probably a contender. Miami was a contender every year he was there, all 4 years. Cleveland, what do you want to say, 5, 6, 7 out of the years out of those 11, they were true, legitimate title contenders? Lakers, LeBron's been there 6 years. They've been contenders twice. So poor management, number one. Number two, this sort of leads into it. LeBron is in year 21. He wants to win now. Like, he wants to win now. Yes, he's got the scoring record. Yes, he's got the 4 championships and the 4 MVPs. He wants more than that. He wants to add a 5th title. He wants an opportunity to make it even more difficult. LeBron has said he believes he's the greatest player ever. I tend to agree. We can argue that another day. But LeBron is of the mindset that, hey, I mean, am I really going to just waste my time in LA? Yeah, we get to the first round. We may sneak out a playoff series, but we're really not well coached enough. And I don't really trust the guys around me. And Anthony Davis can be hot and cold come playoff time. You know, it'd be nice if I had a Jalen Brunson as my point guard in New York or a Tyrese Maxey with the 76ers, and I could be the steadying force that Joel Embiid has needed all these years. You know, it'd be nice if I went back to Miami. Still a great culture, still well run, great coach, okay roster, but they always overachieve in the playoffs. Be nice to go to that. Be nice to go to that guy in Golden State, Steph Curry. He could sure use a co-star at this point. I don't know. I can pose that later. Be nice to have those situations. Better management, better coaching, better co-stars, or at least more consistent co-stars than I have now. LeBron's in year 21. He wants to win now. He's not here for some rebuilding nonsense. He wants to win right now. And some might say, well, Bryson, maybe he does want to win now. He's one of the most competitive athletes ever. He wouldn't have got to this point without having that competitive fire. But Bronny's playing at USC. He's a freshman, and he's probably going to the NBA next year. Not to mention, the LeBron's net worth has literally doubled since he went to LA because of his production company, all the things he's been involved with, Space Jam, whatever the case may be. Why would you want to leave that? You're telling me that if he, say, went to Golden State, that he couldn't still be out west, still support Bronny, still go to some of his games, and his businesses in LA, they're not going anywhere. He could still manage them from another city for the last 2, 3, 4 months of the season, however long his team, where whoever he's with, plays beyond this point. So reason number 3, his business in LA, that's secure. KD's still got business in Golden State. He's still got connections in Silicon Valley. Okay, Shaq, like think about Shaq. Like he's one of the most successful business people to ever be associated with the NBA. You got all the commercials, right? He's never met a commercial that he didn't love. Businesses and connections in LA, in Miami, in Atlanta. Like, don't kid yourself. Shaq at Miami. Shaq has got connections all over the place here. You tell me LeBron can't? LeBron still has ties to Cleveland with the I Promise School. I'm sure he still has ties to Miami. You're telling me he could still have ties to Los Angeles? And by the way, he could spend his offseason in LA. A lot of athletes do. I mean, a lot of athletes don't live in the city where they play currently. I mean, the international players, Jokic, go back home to Serbia. So I'm just saying those 3 reasons why LeBron should ask out LA. And I get Rich Paul, his agent came out today. We are not going to trade. You know, there's no trade request by LeBron. The Lakers aren't going to trade him. Maybe. Or, and if I sound conspiracy theory-ish, please call me out on it because they get on my nerves more than just about anybody. Is it out of the realm of possibility? Just a suggestion that Rich Paul is putting out that statement, the power agent in the NBA, LeBron's agent, Clutch Sports, that he's coming out there and saying that in order to suggest, hey, you know, LeBron doesn't want to leave LA while secretly maybe working something out with somebody with the Lakers? Because do you think the Lakers would come out and say, yeah, LeBron's not leaving. LeBron's not going anywhere. Folks, LeBron could be a free agent this summer. So you might want to get something for him because wherever Bronny goes, LeBron's going as well. So all I'm saying is to my guy, Mike Dunleavy Jr., GM of the Golden State Warriors, I don't think it's, given that LeBron's contract is expiring, he'll probably leave anyway, sort of a Kawhi Leonard situation back in Toronto. Klay Thompson, Jonathan Kuminga, some picks. Maybe include a Moses Moody in there in that package to bring old King James to the Bay Area. And by the way, the Knicks, the Heat, they have similar cases. I'm just saying, just suggesting it. Let's see what we got here. Patrick Brown. What's up, Patrick? What's up, and happy Friday. Happy Friday to you, Patrick. And by the way, before I get to future comments, Patrick Brown putting it, just, folks, y'all don't even know this. Patrick Brown putting out articles by the wazoo on the Grid Network's website. He just wrote a piece. He wrote one about Ben Simmons that was very intriguing, but he also wrote one about Bill Belichick and the fact that all these head coach openings, 8 of them, and Belichick didn't get, I think it was 8 of them, and Belichick didn't get a single one. He wrote a very good piece on that, so please check that out on the Grid Network's website, gridnetwork.com. Check it out. Mike Guido, also part of the Grid, the co-founder of the Grid. Get him back to Cleveland. Garland, Mitchell, LeBron, Mobley, Allen. Well, you probably have to give up some of those pieces to get LeBron, Mike. And Mike, by the way, obviously, if you can't tell there, massive Cavs fan. That's a possibility. I mean, maybe LeBron wants to one last hurrah in Cleveland. I've always secretly believed LeBron's going to end his career in Cleveland. I always feel like he's going to play, if it's a half season. Like, remember when D. Wade played all those years in Miami, then went to Chicago, then Cleveland, and then he got traded back to Miami and played like the last year and a half of his career there. I could see that's happening with LeBron. Like, he plays with Bronny, lets Bronny, sort of get comfortable in the league. And then that one last year, he goes back to Cleveland for one more year. I could see that happening. I really could. Grady Edwards, Lakers fan, by the way. This team should be 50 wins, fully healthy, easy. But there is some indictment on LeBron that this team is 500, Bryson. He's the most criticized and over-offended superstar I've ever seen. What do you mean by that, Grady? Because if it's talking about, he says, great, they were contenders in 2020 through 21. My man just got hurt versus Solomon Hill. That's fair. And they were the 1 seed or a top 3 seed when LeBron went down, if I remember correctly, when Solomon Hill dove into LeBron's ankle. It was a very dirty play, by the way. And then they fell down. They were in the play-in tournament. Then they had the lead on Phoenix, and then AD got hurt. I don't know. I think there was the fatigue. And you saw Miami with the same thing, right? Like, Miami got to the finals in the bubble, virtually no offseason, and they get trounced by Milwaukee in the first round. That I think eventually the wear and tear would have gotten to the Lakers. Had he not gotten hurt against Solomon Hill, sure, but we'll see. Yes, Grady, go back to Cleveland and finish out in the land. He'll finish in LA, though. You said over-defended. I thought you said over. My bad. Okay, over-defended. Yes, but I could make the same case about other athletes on his level. And by the way, I can be guilty of that. You could say that about MJ. You can say that about, I don't know, Magic Johnson. I wouldn't say Kareem. I think Kareem's maybe the most underrated player in the history of the league. No, actually, I've said Moses Malone is the most underrated player. People don't remember. Well, I wasn't around then. Moses Malone was a dude. Moses Malone was a dude back in the day. I'm just going to say right now. Mike Guido, he'll retire a Cav. To what capacity he plays is up in the air. Well, we'll see. I mean, listen, I hate the Cavs to the marrow of my bone. Hate the Cavs. All those finals battles all those years ago. But it kind of feels like that's where it should end. Like, D-Wade was always a Miami Heat. If D-Wade had retired with the Orlando Magic, it'd have been, it just wouldn't have felt right. I don't know. I do feel like LeBron should end his career in Cleveland. I really do. Sticking with the NBA, because there's been like a major, I don't even want to say debate, but a discussion regarding this new, and this is the first season it's been implemented, this 65-game threshold. NBA's an 82-game season, 65-game threshold that you have to meet in order to qualify for regular season awards. So that's become a topic of discussion the last few days, in large part because Joel Embiid, and I talked about this on my show, missed a couple games against Denver, and I think against Portland. Then he comes back against my Warriors, already doesn't look terribly healthy, and then with while the ball's on the floor, Jonathan Kuminga of my Warriors falls on Embiid's leg. He re-aggravates it. Now he's going to be out for multiple weeks. I think it's a torn meniscus, which sucks. And it probably, due to the 65-game threshold, probably takes Embiid out of the MVP discussion. So now it feels like it's Jokic. I think Jalen Brunson. Excuse me, I got something in my eye right now. Jalen Brunson, I think, is kind of a wild card. I think Jalen Brunson should start getting some shine and maybe a little bit of attention for MVP. But it feels like Jokic at this point remains the front runner. Kawhi Leonard potentially, but Tyrese Haliburton, who plays for the Indiana Pacers, and full disclosure, I've been a Haliburton guy for years. I remember the first time I remember watching Tyrese Haliburton was his rookie year in Sacramento, because that's who drafted him. He plays for the Pacers now. And it was early in the season. They were playing my Warriors. That was right in the middle of COVID. It was the middle of pandemic, 2020 through 21 season. It was like early January. And I remember watching this kid. I'm like, man, he doesn't look like a rookie. Like, he's twitchy and really athletic and gets his spots on the floor. Like, he's a really mature rookie. I was a big Haliburton guy, and I crushed Sacramento for trading him to Indiana. Still think they should have kept him with De'Aaron Fox. He's better than Sabonis, but that's neither here nor there. He's with the Pacers now, but he's been hurt in the last couple weeks. He suffered an injury, and despite having a great year, he's leading the league in assists, the whole bit. Haliburton, and being an all-star starter, by the way, Haliburton's probably not going to qualify for postseason awards. And he was talking about this 65-game threshold. You have to meet. The NBA instituted this year. And Haliburton said, quote, I think it's a stupid rule, like plenty of the guys in the league, but this is what the owners want. So as players, we got to do our job and play in 65 games if we're able to. So that's what I got to do. Take care of my body to be able to play in those games. And I think you're seeing other players in the league kind of face that same thing, as long as the owners are happy, end quote. So he is making the case that this should not be in place. More on Haliburton in just a second, but Draymond Green, my guy, I'm a big Draymond guy, was talking to his podcast, The Draymond Green Show, highly popular podcast, and I'm glad he's back, by the way, since the suspension. He's back doing his podcast, highly entertaining, and Draymond was talking about this thing as well, because obviously he played in the game in which Embiid re-aggravated his knee. Draymond, quote, Joel playing tonight felt very much so because of the 65-game rule. I think it's actually quite bull, you know what. You get Joel, who comes out there tonight, and he forces it. Freak play with him and Jonathan Kuminga diving for the ball, but maybe it's not as bad if the knee isn't already banged up. I don't really bang with it. Now we've got one of our premier faces in this league, the MVP of our league, possibly hurt for an extended period of time because he's forcing it, end quote. So Draymond doesn't care for this rule. And it seemed like I remember Draymond talking about this in the past before the season. To Haliburton first, because he's the one, he went so far as to say it's a stupid rule. Draymond called it BS. I'll say this about Haliburton. I get his frustration 1,000%. Because it's not Haliburton's fault that this rule's in place. This rule's in place, we all know why, load management. Because you have so many guys who have Kawhi Leonard sort of the ring bearer of it to a certain degree, and the Spurs back in the day, where you rest your star player when he's probably 1,000% healthy. And my guy, Barry Grant Jr., All Even Podcast, shout out to him. He was all over this when a study came out about a month ago that showed, hey, playing basketball more is actually better for you than if you're off and on the bench, playing, on the bench, playing. Like, it's when it's kind of inconsistent up and down like that, as is with any form of athletic activity or physical activity of any sort, the injury risk actually goes higher. Like, this study came out not that long ago. And Tyrese Haliburton's like, timeout. I'm in my 4th year in the league. I've been one of the best players in basketball this year. Maybe a sneaky MVP candidate had I been healthy. And because I suffered one injury, I'm going to miss out on all this money and all this opportunity. From Haliburton's perspective, I have absolute sympathy for him, or empathy. I hate that for him. As for Draymond Green and others who have criticized this, seemed like I remember even Kawhi Leonard coming out against this. With all due respect, they're wrong. They're dead wrong. And Haliburton's wrong as well, but I feel sympathy for Haliburton because of the fact that he had nothing to do with this rule. He had nothing to do with this rule. He's been playing his game. He's a young guy. He's not load management. He's out there playing his you-know-what off, and he suffers an injury, and he may miss out on postseason awards. The NBA didn't have a choice. They had to institute this. And they instituted, I remember talking about this, I think it was at the beginning of football season as well, where the NBA instituted an additional rule to combat load management, where they essentially said, you have to play national TV games. If you're not injured, you have to play. Like, you have to have a disclosed injury. Like, that's why they're investigating the Embiid thing, because his injury was announced 15 minutes before tip-off against Denver on a nationally televised Saturday afternoon game in Denver. That's why they're investigating, because you have to have a disclosed injury. It can't just be you sitting because of rest. You can't do that on national TV. It's bad for the TV networks, bad for silver, bad for the overall product. I didn't think it was a good rule because my thing was, okay, the Warriors play more national TV games this season than anybody, 41. That's half the games. The other half of the games, they can rest them as many as they want if they wanted to. So the Warriors play the most. But if you have a team like the Clippers who aren't on national TV as much, well, they can rest as many times as they want. So I think that rule didn't really combat load management at all. The 65-game rule, though, probably does. Could it use some tweaking for players who are legitimately hurt? Yes. But it also goes back to the bigger conversation. It isn't as if you don't play 65 games, you don't get your check for the season. You don't get paid. That would be different. You don't qualify for postseason awards. Well, that's like getting a bonus at work. It's like getting a promotion, like a bonus, a holiday bonus, whatever the case may be at work. That's kind of what these postseason awards are for players. So, again, from Haliburton's perspective, I feel bad for the kid because he's like, this is totally out of my control. One bad play happened. I'm going to miss out on $40 million because of a rule instituted that I had nothing to do with. I get that. But for other players, Kawhi criticized it. And it's for Kawhi to go after. I'm like, Kawhi, you might be the reason this rule even exists. You know what I'm saying? Like, again, it got to a point where it was bad for the networks. It cost the NBA some money. Listen, when you mess with owners and commissioners' bottom line, then it's going to be a problem. So the 65 rule game, I think, has to be in place to combat this very thing. Embiid playing, that's his prerogative. And him playing is what might cost him MVP. And it sucks that sort of came to fruition. I get that because of freak play with Jonathan Kuminga, but at the same time, it was his decision to play. So all these sort of combine into a nuanced conversation as well. So for certain players who had nothing to do with this, like Tyrese Haliburton, I get their frustration. For others, Kawhi Leonard, even to a certain extent, not to the level of Kawhi, but even to a certain extent, my man Draymond, they're wrong on this because it's players like Kawhi predominantly why this rule exists. Before we get to our guests, let's look at some comments. Grady is in here. I think it should be 60. This is what Grady says. I think it should be 60 games, but 55 to 65 games, man. A fan pays their hard-earned money to go see their favorite players, and you miss out on LeBron and AD load management for 2 years. That's what happened to one of my best friends when him and his dad buy tickets to go see the Hornets and Lakers game. Yeah, and that's something that really, and that, by the way, too, Grady, that's why I didn't like the whole national TV rule. I don't think that's going to work because, like you mentioned, you said Hornets Lakers. How many games the Hornets on national television? You know, like Lakers Hornets is going to be on TV locally in LA and in Charlotte, and then on NBA League Pass. They're not going to be on national TV. So, like, for games like that, for smaller markets like Charlotte, like Orlando's on the come up, but still ways to go. Like Detroit, like Portland, they're not going to be on national TV, so they could sit if they wanted to because it wouldn't be against the rules. I don't know. I don't think that rule really works. Grady, I'm good with 55 to 60 games, but there should be a minimum to qualify. I agree. Just like there's one to qualify to lead the league in scoring or any category prior to this year, this isn't as new of an idea as people think. That's a great point. I did not think about that. That's a great point, Grady. Yeah, you have to play a certain amount of games to qualify to lead the league in scoring. That's a great point. So yeah, there you go. It's a nuanced conversation, but I do think the rule should be in place. Okay. We've got a new guest coming on who happens to be a brand new member of the Grid Network. He's hosted the first few episodes of the Boston Sports Summit. As you'd imagine, he covers Boston sports. Listen, we would get into Bruins, but I know nothing about hockey, so I'm not even going to touch that. We're getting to some Patriots, some Red Sox, some Celtics. So would you please give a warm welcome, making his debut on Carving Up Live. It is Tim Barnard joining the show. Tim, my man, how you doing? Welcome to Carving It Up.
I'm doing great, except for that game last night. What a total joke it was.
We'll get into that. Right off the bat. But first of all, tell everybody out there, welcome to the show. Tell everybody out there about Boston Sports Summit and sort of like the thesis of the show, or the background of the show and what goes into that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, Boston Irish, couldn't tell. Grew up rooting for all four of these teams. They've been my teams my entire life, no matter where I've lived in this great country of ours. And, being a part of the grid and being able to talk about all four of my sports teams. I mean, I have an opinion on all of it. So I'm excited to be able to talk about it because it kind of makes me feel like, to some extent, I'm doing sports talk radio up in Boston because that's all they do. They talk all four sports teams. And I feel like you have a Patriots specific, a Celtics specific, a Red Sox specific on this show, on Boston Sports Summit. It's everything. Everything is fair game.
For sure. And listen, I know as well as anybody, I guess as a Red Sox fan, so I have like minimal ties to Boston to a certain degree. That's why I wore this Red Sox hoodie. I want to be there too, Red Sox. You're the first Red Sox fan to be on the show, just for the record, just to let you know that. That's not me, so very excited about that. But listen, Boston it's kind of like Philadelphia, kind of like New York. Like, these cities are very much like, if you don't show up, if you don't give the results that we're looking for, like, we're going to let you know about it. And to a large degree, I respect that, because the fans hold a lot of power in that city. There's no question about that. I do want to ask you though about that game last night, because that's the most recent event that happened, recent major event, I guess, that happened in Boston sports. The Celtics playing the undermanned Lakers, no LeBron James, no Anthony Davis, with their entire cast of characters, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, still managed to lose 114-105, and Lakers from start to finish, Tim, controlled that game throughout. What is, I guess this is sort of a two-part question. Mm-hmm. Your concerns with that game, and does it affect your overall outlook of this season? Because I think Boston should win the East. I picked them to win the East before the season.
Well, so I'm going to start off with this. This team is probably the most talented team in the NBA. Top to bottom, I think they're the most talented team in the NBA. And not only should they win the East, but they should at least go on to the NBA Finals. They should go on to the NBA Finals and compete for a championship, and not have get swept or be down or lose 4-1 in the series. It should be either they're doing the sweeping or it's going 6-7 games in the NBA Finals. And if they lose on a final shot, then fine. Like, I get it. But ultimately, that game last night, it scares me. Because it's not just last night. It's a culmination of what's gone on, what feels like over the last week and a half. Ever since that loss to Denver, it feels like the Celtics are going back to what they were last season, where they were down 3-0 against Miami. They, forced a Game 7 against Philly. That, again, they were better than Philly. They were better than Miami. They should have been in the NBA Finals again last season. But the way they play, the way it's been going on recently, it scares me, because they were 20-0 at home, dominating left and right. And then you have, a close loss to Denver, which they should have won that game. Like, I
remember watching that. Yeah, on ESPN.
Yeah, they should have won that game, but just cradled, whatever the phrase is.
Yeah.
Turtled, there we go. Turtled at the end of it. And Tatum felt rushed, and it doesn't look like he can really slow things down. And then from there, they felt like they've been falling back. That game against New Orleans on Monday, I think it was, they were down 17 to the Pelicans. I mentioned this on my Instagram when I went live last night, recapping the final 5 minutes of the Lakers Celtics. I'm like, they barely beat the Pelicans, who are 8th in the Western Conference, barely hanging on to a play-in spot. And now you go against the Lakers, who are without probably the two best players by a lot on that team. Like, it's AD, LeBron, and then D'Angelo Reeves, Russell.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I sat there and I'm like watching, going, like, wanting to pull my hair out. I don't have any, but it's not long enough. But sure. I was just like, what the hell is going on? And, it's almost like they thought to themselves that the balls are out in the court. we're just going to walk in there. We don't have to do a damn thing. They're going to give us the game. Mm-hmm. And that's been the mentality for Tatum and Brown. I feel like ever since they put on Celtics uniforms, it's, when they go against an easy opponent, they take it easy. They're like, we're good.
Kind of going through the motions.
Yeah. And that's what happened last night. And you know what? I'm glad that Celtics fans got after them because, again, we know better. We're not stupid when it comes to this. And even though a lot of people wanted to blame Joe Mazzulla for that game last night when listening to sports talk radio and stuff after the game, it's like, no. You have Jaylen Brown, who, quite honestly, is vastly overpaid. Vastly overpaid.
Yeah, it's a big concept.
8 points. 8 points. Like, I was in favor of getting rid of him. With the contract. I was like, you know what? Either trade him or let him walk because he's not worth it. And you have games like this. It's a joke.
And that's what's going to be tough because Tatum's going to make even more than that once his contract is up. And that's, one thing with Jaylen Brown is, and that's what made it tough for Boston because it's like, that's why I think trading him a season ago, mid-season could have been the better option because at least you're not trapped in having to make that decision. You get something in return because you can't just let him walk. That'd have been the worst decision is at least keep him, you get that production or move him for something else. You don't just sit on your hands and let nothing happen. But the thing I've always, and I've been a Jaylen Brown guy for years, the one thing that for some odd reason, he's a guard too, which is odd, is that his handle is atrocious. I remember the first time I really, really noticed it was that 2022 finals against my Warriors. I'm sitting there thinking, man, like every time Draymond takes this guy, it's a disaster. And so, but I think the loss for Boston that really sort of was like, whoa, hang on, the game for Boston, they actually won the game, was when the Pistons who were on that crazy losing streak took Boston to overtime, and then Tatum made a couple of shots there at the end to pull away. But that was where I was kind of like, And I'm with you. I would not put last night's loss on Joe Mazzulla, but I think this is a guy where, listen, last year there was obviously a big talent gap between Boston and Miami. Miami still won the series, but when you have Eric Spoelstra, Joe Mazzulla, that's not a fair fight. And so I thought the addition of Sam Cassell would potentially address that as one of the assistant coaches. We'll see come mid-April past that if that makes a huge difference. And experience obviously pays off for a guy like Joe Mazzulla. I just don't know if that's going to be something that's – and listen, the East is in a weird spot right now where Miami, you got to worry about Miami because they always seem to flip a switch in the playoffs even though they're not playing very well right now. Milwaukee, I don't trust them now with Doc coaching. The Knicks, I like them. I'm a big Brunson guy, but do they have quite the pieces to get over the top? Maybe. East feels really wide open. Like it's kind of like if Boston doesn't win the East this year, then there needs to be some serious questions asked in terms of how they address that roster. But if you have any thoughts on that, I'm down to hear it.
Yeah, well, again, just jumping back to your point about Mazzulla. Like, listen, I'm one of the guys. I don't know how you feel about this. I'm one of these guys that, to be honest with you, coaching in the NBA is so minute, it's not even funny. Like when it
compared
really
to the NFL, it is.
Yeah, like essentially all the coach does is just been like, okay, you come off, you come on, and maybe I'll drop a couple plays. The problem with Joe Mazzulla is he, again, I had this rant on Wednesday night talking about the nerds and talking about how analytics has ruined sports and is infiltrated what the Lions did on Sunday. And it's scaring me because I don't want, major decisions to come down to numbers, because what do numbers tell you? All you have to do is pluck this versus this. Well, I'm going to leave that out because if I just do this, it helps my point, So
Sure.
Again, this whole idea in the NBA that, again, hey, 3 is greater than 2. Well, no duh. Like,
if you can shoot them is the thing. That's why it worked for Golden State, because when you have the Splash Brothers, of course you're going to take them. Like it's a case-by-case basis.
Exactly. Yet the Celtics, ironically, they put up the most 3-point attempts in the NBA. And the problem with, Joe Mazzulla, that, again, listen, it was the players last night. That's 100% where the blame should be. The only exception I would have in, angle that I would point to Joe Mazzulla is the fact that you don't have Anthony Davis there. How big was their center in that the Lakers played? what, 6'11", maybe 7 feet tops.
And it is not as long as Anthony Davis. No,
And
it
it's
doesn't
not as
create the
long.
havoc down low. Yeah.
So why did the Celtics throw up 48 threes in that game and only you have 7 free throws? Why did Kristaps Porzingis shoot 7 or 8 threes in the game versus being down low, being in the paint, taking advantage, being the unicorn that he is? When you don't have Anthony Davis in there, just play to the team. Don't play to the scheme, and the scheme is shoot as many threes as you humanly possible. Kind of I would say, modified version of the 7 seconds or less Suns. You know, if you think about it,
Sure.
It's just like throw up as many threes as possible. You'll end up making more than you missed, or something to that effect. In which case, you'll be better than the team. And Joe Mazzulla, schemes to the analytics. He doesn't scheme to what the other team is doing, where who's in, who's out. How can I take advantage of that with my roster? And that's where I place the blame on that. And yeah, you know what? The other team I would be on the lookout for in the playoffs to probably dethrone the Celtics are the Pacers. Because there were 3 games where I was questioning everything. And yes, I honestly thought that was I would have bet on Detroit to win that game against Boston, because it felt like, with my history watching Boston sports my whole life, it felt like such a trap game that I'm like, the Celtics will blow this. They will be that team, to lose to the Pistons. But the 3 games that have stuck out in my mind are the Indiana Pacers, where in the play-in.
Play-in. Okay, yeah.
Play-in.
Yeah.
Not the play-in, but the in-season tournament. That's what I'm thinking of. The Detroit game, and then the Nuggets game. Those are really the 3 games that stuck out to me, and why I'm concerned about the Pacers going forward, because I don't know, sometimes the mentality in these guys, and if you give, because I know Jalen doesn't want the last shot, Tatum, everything speeds up for him. When he released that ball against Denver, there were still 3 full seconds. Like I stopped it when that ball was out of his hand, and the shot clock said 3 seconds, or not shot clock, but the game clock said 3 seconds on it. Like, take a deep breath, calm down. You got plenty of time. And he didn't. He rushed it. That's why I think they blew it against Denver. So he can't be the final shot. So who is? Derek White? I love White. He's been the best player, I think, arguably, for the Celtics this season. If not, the second best for sure.
He's definitely been consistent. And obviously, everybody remembers the shot he made against Miami, the little putback shot that was crazy. But let's see.
Blew that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he took the shot very early in the game clock. Patrick Brown, who's a Lakers fan, in the comments. Reeves went 7 for 10 from 3. I was utterly shocked. The Lakers won without LeBron and AD. We were on a 2-game losing streak and looked discouraged. And that's kind of like and this isn't to make you, if I can make you feel better, that I don't think it's much of a Celtics thing. It's more of an NBA thing, like sort of the wounded dog theory, where it's a team comes in, you don't really take them seriously. They build a rhythm, they build a little bit of confidence, and they sort of ride that out the rest of the game. Whether they win or lose, it's a lot tighter and more tense than you would hope it to be. One thing with Porzingis you bring up though is he, and then we can move on to the Red Sox, is his inability to score down low. Tim, Dallas had that exact same criticism of him. Washington wasn't near as relevant as Dallas or as Boston, but like that was kind of a thing there too. Is he's kind of a 7'3" perimeter player. Like that's just, I don't know if it's on his DNA. It's how he's built physically, mentally. I don't know what that is, but that's definitely been something that has hurt him in the past. And
one thing,
yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
One thing to Patrick's comment about Austin Reeves. Guess who was guarding him all night? The $300 million man, Jaylen Brown.
It's not great.
Well,
and I like Austin Reeves, but I don't know about that. I don't know about I don't like him that much. You know what I'm saying?
No.
For sure. For sure. So let's move on to the Red Sox, a team that you and I share a deep love and passion for. They have had an uneventful offseason, to say the very least. You could call it eventful maybe for the wrong reasons in terms of the ownership group. But we did get some good news today in that, at least I perceived as good news, in that fact that Theo Epstein, who's the curse breaker in Major League Baseball. He broke the Red Sox curse in 04, the Cubs curse in 16. So he joined the Fenway Sports Ownership Group today. It got announced today. So he's with the Red Sox. He's not like the president of baseball operations like he was back in the day. But I would assume he's going to be in some decision-making role to a certain degree. I'd be shocked if that's not the case, given his team-building history. Your reaction to that, and we can move on to the ownership after that, but your reaction to Theo Epstein coming back to Boston.
Yeah. So I woke up this morning to see that news. Like, first thing, the Athletic notification on my phone, Theo's back. And I had to read that twice because I was like, no way. And sorry about that.
No worries.
But so I was stunned. And I'm like, okay, is this real? And I looked it up, saw it on all over Twitter, and I was like, at gut reaction, I was like, okay, that's great. But then I read the press release, and it got me a little discouraged. It got me feeling like this is just a PR stunt. Because when you read what John Henry, issued, saying, quote, with his strategic mind, leadership, unwavering passion for sports, Theo brings invaluable assets that will drive us forward across our diverse enterprises, especially in our sporting operations across hockey, EPL, and baseball. And to me, that sounded like, oh, he's going to have a say in everything. And it also, to me, had me a little worried because I think Theo talked about it himself. He's like, yeah, I'm, and a senior advisor. So whatever the team needs, I will be there to give advice for.
Right.
In which case I'm like, well, so what? You're just going to sit back, and if Breslow or Kennedy, are trying to figure out this deal, they're going to call you to say, hey, what can we get any final touches here and there? Versus, I don't know, being an integral part in making that deal, being an integral part in going after players like the freaking Orioles, who had new ownership 2 days ago and traded for one of the best starting pitchers in baseball. Yep. Like, what? So what is Epstein's role? Is he going to have say on the Penguins? Is he going to have say on Liverpool? Like, it's, and then he's going to come to baseball, or is baseball his lone priority? Because according to John Henry, his strategic mind is diverse enough to focus on hockey, soccer, and baseball. So I'm a little worried that, again, Fenway Sports Group is doing Fenway Sports Group. They're trying to find ways to get the fans off their back because they know we are too smart, essentially, for our own good sometimes. Because honestly, when you talk about, and we'll get to it probably in a minute, but when you talk about going full throttle and the free agency is Shohei Ohtani, Yoshida, I don't know his first name, but Yamamoto. 25-year-old pitcher, in Japan, even the lefty, in Japan, several of these other guys. Like, you talk about going full throttle and then don't capitalize. And now you want to save face by bringing back the curse breaker, bringing back the guy who, snapped the 86-year curse of the Bambino. I'm happy, but I'm scared for that it's almost a PR stunt rather than a legit Red Sox move.
That's an interesting way to go about it. And I mean, listen, it became a running joke I made on social media is anytime you'd see, like, I follow like Sox Network. I follow a lot of Red Sox accounts on social media, like Sox Network. I get the notifications all the time where the Red Sox are interested in X, whether it's Ohtani, Yamamoto. I think Adolis Garcia, I think, was mentioned. It's like, yeah, they're great at being interested in guys. They're always interested. Who isn't interested in one of the greatest baseball talents in the history of the world, Shohei Ohtani, and one of the best pitchers we've ever seen come from overseas in Yamamoto. And that has been what's frustrating for me as a Red Sox fan. I think the first domino to fall had to be the Mookie Betts trade in early 2020. I will still, as long as I live, never forgive the franchise for making that move and not just giving that man his money. And you see how it's worked in LA. He's been Mookie Betts. He's been fantastic. And it's what doesn't make sense to me, Tim, is that obviously the Dodgers have a rich ownership group. So the Yankees, so do the Red Sox. They used to go out and get these big name free agents. Again, like JD Martinez was a massive get going into 2018 and was a driving force in us winning the World Series, trading for Chris Sale. Again, as a Red Sox fan, I wasn't a fan for what's that?
I was again go with Kyle Crawford, Manny Ramirez,
Yes.
Pedro Martinez. Well, actually, I think Pedro was before them, but still,
Yeah, a rich ownership group, no salary cap in baseball. Like they have an opportunity to go out and get these guys, and they've kind of just like they're not even amongst the five. I mean, the Cubs are beating them out. The freaking Blue Jays are beating them out. Tim, what is going on right now? How's the end division? It's one thing if the Yankees are beating you out. Yes, they're rich. They got the history. The Blue Jays. Like that's where I sat back and like you mentioned the Orioles going and making the trade they did yesterday with the new ownership. It's like, is it a situation where the ownership group has their hands in so many different enterprises, like you mentioned, Liverpool, the Penguins, the Pittsburgh Penguins, where it's the Red Sox have kind of become like a side thing that they sort of care about, but not really. Yeah, listen, I'm excited. I think I'm more excited I shouldn't say more excited than you, but more optimistic than you are about Theo. About like I think he'll have more of a say than John Henry's letting on. Maybe that's just a press release, put that out there, whatever. I think I'll have more of a say than that. Hopefully, as much potentially as Breslow. But it has been it's sort of like I'm shocked that we kept Devers last year, just given how this has gone for sure.
Well, it's funny you bring up Devers because you know how. The Red Sox fans, in my opinion, were the ones that signed Devers. So on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, they had the hockey game, Winter Classic at Fenway. It was Bruins Penguins because, of course, John Henry just bought the Penguins, and he's like, okay, I want this to happen. And of course, what goes on is his limo pulls up on Lansdowne Street, and literally. Red Sox fans, there's videos of it, holding up, signed Devers. So as he's stepping out, we're booing him, yelling at him. I wasn't there, but I saw all these videos on Twitter just going at him. And again, they eventually catered because I thought the same thing and that Mookie Betts deal. You're right. I will never forgive them for that because now listen, were there more sides to the story that I think both sides are letting on? I think there were. Sure. I think there was this, I'm not sure if they pulled like a John Lester where they just, in Xander Bogaerts, where they just undersold Mookie so much he basically had two middle fingers up to them, or that there were some circumstances with the city that he claims, or claims this, that, and the other. Like, I'm not going to get into it, but, and that's why he's just like, I need out of Boston. I need a new change of scenery, whatever. Sure. Just get me the hell out of here. And of course, what was it, last year or 2 years ago, where they asked him straight up, what would you have signed in Boston if you got the same exact deal you got in LA? And he, without skipping a beat, he goes, undoubtedly. I definitely would have stayed in Boston, which again begs the question, what happened? Where did this all stem from? Because I can tell you, they traded John Lester for Yoenis Cespedes because John Lester wanted to stay for a hometown discount. They wildly undersold him, even though they went out, got Kyle Crawford, Pablo Sandoval. I think actually Pablo Sandoval was after that. But they wildly undersold a fan favorite in Lester and then traded him for a guy, which I was like, you know what? Cespedes is a good player. Like I'm not gonna be angry about that. 100% angry about that. And then they let him walk, after the second half of the season. Then fast forward to Xander Bogaerts. Xander Bogaerts, they again undersold him wildly. Once again, wanted to stay, would have stayed for a hell of a lot less than he got in San Diego, but they wouldn't come up even a fraction, I bet. So he took the big payday in San Diego, and you have Red Sox fans being like, well, of course we don't want to sign him for that. It's not that we would have signed him for that. It's that he wanted a hell of a lot less from you, but we weren't even willing to offer it to him. And that's what I've been saying for years. I remember the first enterprise that John Henry and Fenway Sports Group bought after the Red Sox. I think it was around 06, 07. So I don't know if we had one or two World Series at the time, but was Roush Fenway Racing. They bought that. They bought in on that enterprise in NASCAR, and light bulbs went off in my head, and I was 16, 15, 16 years old when this all went down, and I'm like, wait a minute, hold on, this is bad. This is bad. Like, this isn't gonna be good for us. And then, of course, a few years later, they bought Liverpool. About 10 years later, they bought the Penguins, and now they want to probably start a team with LeBron in Vegas. And now they invested $3 billion in the PGA Tour, which, come to find out, the commissioner of the PGA Tour and Sam Kennedy are tight. And Sam Kennedy was at the signing today. And it's so funny because, again, he's really not a part of Fenway Sports Group. He's the president and CEO of the Red Sox. It's not like, yes, FSG pays him, but he's a sole Red Sox guy. So what the hell is he doing at the PGA signing?
No, it's a disconnect there, and it's now, like you mentioned, they I remember when the moment that it really just made my blood boil and just broke my Red Sox loving heart into 1,000 pieces was last year when the Dodgers came to Fenway and Mookie got the standing ovation. And Mookie, like you sort of referenced, like some of the media hits he did where he was like, yeah, I'd love to stay in Boston. Love my time here. We won a championship. And it's like, God, that just makes it even worse. If he didn't want to be here, that's one thing. Okay, well, at least get something for him. And it's like, man, the guy wanted to stay, and he would have been the face of your franchise after Poppy retired, and like that definitely made it tougher. To the Patriots, who are in sort of of the Boston team, certainly in the most the biggest transitional sort of situation. Belichick gone. We'll get into him later. Jerome Mayo, now the new head coach. Belichick, assistant linebacker. By the way, Tennessee Volleyball for life. I see that Gator helmet behind you, and I don't like that. No. Listen, I know y'all own us, and I just come on.
Been 20 years, and you get another 20 more before you win in the swamp there.
The last time, Tim, that they won in the swamp, that the Vols won the swamp, I was like 6 months old or something. So 2003. It's like full context. So yeah, it's been a painful existence outside of 2016 and 22. But anyways, that aside, is like that never happened. So go Vols, Jerome Mayo. But he's the new head coach. The Patriots are drafting top 5. We assume they're going to take a quarterback. What's sort of your takeaway on what are your expectations this coming year for New England? Because obviously Buffalo's a contender. Miami is a perennial playoff team. The Jets, who the heck knows what's going to happen with the Jets? And the Patriots are kind of in a rebuild scenario where they can go nowhere but up. What's your thoughts on Jerome Mayo and a potential of drafting a quarterback?
Yeah, I wish I could sit here and tell you that we're going to be fine. We're going to bounce back. It's just going to be last season was just a down year. But I can't, I really can't, because with Gerard Mayo, like, listen, I love Gerard. I think he's going to be hopefully more of that player's coach that, you see in pretty much, I think, all of sports now. Like, there really is no more drill sergeant. It's my way or get the hell out of here, type of attitude anymore. And obviously Bill Belichick was probably him and Popovich are probably the last guys that have that mentality and will not stray from it. But I'm worried because, don't get me wrong, Gerard Mayo, I think will be fine. The hire or upgrade DeMarcus Covington for D-line to DC, I think was fine. I mean, I really have no which way or, no feelings which way about it. The thing that scares me, though, is obviously the offense. Because the only 2 guys, honestly, on the team that are worth keeping around are obviously Pop Douglas, who's a 6th-round draft pick and is tiny as hell. And I don't know how he's going to, survive if he doesn't bulk up. And then, Hunter Henry is decent. Ramondre Stevenson is good. Kendrick Bourne, I love his attitude. He seems like a really good guy, like a good team morale guy. But he's gonna, he's on free agency and just had that major injury. So I'm a little worried. And plus, they just hired Alex Van Pelt, I think his name is, the OC from Cleveland. And while I'm not upset by it, they interviewed 11 other candidates and then settled on him because he worked with Elliott Wolf in Green Bay.
Right.
And that's where I'm kind of like, what are we doing? You seem to want to go get all these, young McVay, Shanahan disciples. And there was talks that Nick Caley, who spent 1 year as a tight ends coach in the Rams, was going to be the OC here, or had a very good chance. And then that falls through. And don't get me wrong, I'm actually happy about that. I'm happy that Nick Caley fell through because, again, 1 year as a tight ends coach, never worked with quarterbacks, never, built an offensive system. And so with all of that being said, we have Alex Van Pelt. And then that quarterback room, I think, is just an absolute disaster.
It's bad.
Absolute disaster. I think Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi are two guys who are like, I'm coming for the job, yet you both suck. So
Zappi's better than Mac, though. You'd acknowledge that? You don't think so?
I think, well, listen, I think Zappi's got a better arm than Mac. I think he can hit those out throws better than Mac can, because with Mac's noodle arm. But I think Mac has, is a better decision maker. I think Mac can read the defense.
I saw this year. I mean,
obviously.
Yeah.
I think both guys aren't great decision makers,
Sure.
but I meant I meant in terms of reading the defense, seeing what the defense is giving you, because what he did under Josh McDaniels in year one leads me to believe that, okay, Mac can be a competent guy in the league. Yes, he needs to somehow hit the gym a hell of a lot more to be able to hit those 15-yard outs. But I'm just like, they are both head cases. They both hate each other. We could have had a guy in Malik Cunningham, but we were like, no, we don't like Bill Belichick doesn't like those types of guys. See Lamar Jackson. We had an opportunity to get him. Josh McDaniels wanted him, but we passed on that. So then we get Malik, and then they're like, oh, we brought him up, put him back. Brought him up, put him back, and then the Ravens claimed him. And I'm glad that he's going to a team that will actually appreciate his talent versus New England.
Sure. And it's a, like Belichick, we've talked about before, like his last 10 drafts have been atrocious. And like, if there was a Patriots had the third pick, am I correct? Third pick of the draft?
Right.
Okay. So we assume Caleb's going to go number 1. Drake May probably goes to Washington too. So that would leave Jaden Daniels. That would leave Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr. Of those three, and if maybe anybody else, like a JJ McCarthy's a wild card. Of those potential guys, let's just say Caleb and Drake May go 1 and 2. Who would you want at number 3?
That's hard, because there are a few things. I personally would like to go and trade like a second round or a third round pick, a late second, early third, get Justin Fields. If we get Justin Fields, then I wouldn't mind getting Jaden Daniels at number 3. But I would prefer to build up, either a receiver or that O-line, because you have the number 3 overall pick. I can sit back and at 34 get probably Bo Nix or get Michael Penix Jr. And if we could build up that O-line, I mean, we had Joe Thuney. We let him walk, which was a joke. Our O-line outside of David Andrews is getting old. Like,
he's been there a while.
He's been there a while, and he just looked at the end of the season kind of like Jason Kelce did when he was after that playoff game. Like, he just looked like he was done. And so I don't know if he's coming back. But our O-line is shambles. So I would prefer to pull a Cleveland or pull a Kansas City and get Eric Fisher, and then make a trade or even trade back from 3, but I would only go as far as 10. If I want to trade back, I would want teams 4 through 10 to make a move for 3, because outside of that, I feel like you're trading too far back. And it's just, if I had to choose a guy, to bring it all back, it would be Jaden Daniels. But with our quarterback room the way it is, I don't want any quarterback, Caleb Williams especially. I want to stay as far away from him as humanly possible.
The greatest quarterback talent in the history of the world. You want to stay away from him?
Absolutely, 100%. I mentioned this, I mentioned this on the 8 o'clock spot. He is a mental head case. He is so far gone. Like, it scares me. He's going to be Ryan Leaf 2.0.
I don't think it's that. I think Ryan Leaf had some off the field, so I don't think it's that bad.
Well,
again, Baker Mayfield might be a better comparison.
All right, yeah. I mean, but no. Baker is. But here's the thing: Baker was competitive. Like, it's weird, but it's like what Caleb Williams has done. I actually was talking about it earlier today. What he did, obviously the crying in the mother's arms. To, like, again, you say what you want about that, but that is, I think, kind of telling, because you lost to a team that went on to the national championship game in Washington. They were 7-3 at the time, USC was. And it was like the world was over for him, with that. And then USC goes to the Holiday. This is what I think is really telling to me. USC goes to the Holiday Bowl. They win the game. The backup quarterback, I want to say Mitchell Moss, throws 6 touchdowns. And the team after the game is chanting, "We a team now. We a team now." And then Mitchell Moss goes on to talk about how no ego, we're a team, no individual effort, kind of throwing jabs at Caleb Williams. So
that's fair.
When you have that, to me, it raises red flags. Listen, I'm not doubting his talent. I'm not doubting the fact that he is, ultra talented. He can do everything with his legs, with his arm, phenomenal. But it's all up in here. It's all, if he's a mental head case, which this season I feel like has really proved it, then I'm worried about Caleb Williams. But ultimately at 3, it's not easy. It's not easy because our quarterback room sucks. And do you want really a rookie to come into the quarterback room? That quarterback room? No, you don't. So I don't know what to do.
My guess is they probably move Mac Jones and see what they can get for him, and probably keep Zappy as the backup or as the third string potentially, depending on what they do. My man Grady actually suggested the other day, like, y'all signing Ryan Tannehill as like a bridge guy. Bring a veteran in the room. I could see that potentially working if you draft a quarterback. Bring Tannehill in, start him the first half of the season, all season. However, that works itself out depending on what the talent. Because I've always been a believer of play a guy right off the bat. Like I remember when the Texans were debating, hey, should we play, I forget the guy's name, Davis Mills, or should we play CJ Stroud? And obviously hindsight's 2020, we saw what Stroud did, but I'm like, better to get him on the field now, get it, because he can't. I know we talk about Aaron Rodgers and Mahomes and now Jordan Love sitting for a long time, but the best experience is actually being out there on the field and trying to make it happen. And so I've been go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think the college game is now is so vastly different from the pro game that I'm the complete opposite. I want a guy to sit for a year. I don't want him to sit for 3 years like Rodgers and Love did. But if they can sit for a year, learn like a real system, learn under one coordinator, and hopefully that coordinator doesn't leave to get a head coaching job, which is why I would have preferred the Pats go after a offensive coach rather than Gerard Mayo, because he's a defensive guy. But if they can learn under one system, then I think that there is a possibility that, okay, this kid can make something of himself rather than getting thrown to the fire, not being able to see it, getting gun shy, which is what Mac Jones has become, because our O-line was decent in 21, his rookie season. And then in 22, he's got Patricia and all hell broke loose. He got gun shy, and got hurt. And after that high ankle sprain, he was never the same again. So that's why, and again, you could go both ways with this. I understand CJ Stroud, but it's going to be, it's interesting to see. And I'm with you. I would actually prefer, obviously I know he's going to cost a crap ton of money, but Kirk Cousins, he's a real guy where 2 years, he doesn't care. He's made his money. He'll
Yeah.
play, he'll be the starter, but the problem is we have all this money to spend, yet with no incentive. No incentive to come here.
And then one time Belichick tried to go after free agents in 2021, like really not, like you mentioned, Hunter Henry's been fine, but outside of that, no one else has really panned out. And longtime listeners of my show know I was never from the jump a Mac Jones guy. I thought like all the draft analysis I heard of Mac Jones, it was like, oh, he reads the field well. I'm like, great. Can he get the ball there? And listen, he did at Alabama. I get that, but it's easy. With all due respect, it's easy to get there. When you got Judy, when you've got Mechie was there, I think at one point you had obviously Henry Ruggs, you had who was Devontae Smith who won the Heisman Trophy. It's like Najee Harris running the football makes your job just a touch easier, just a little bit. And I even saw at the end of his rookie year when McDaniels was there, I like that last 4 games, I was like, they had one good game against Jacksonville. He had some clunkers against Buffalo, against Miami. So like at that point, I was like, okay, I think we're starting to see the real Mac Jones. So it's going to be an interesting offseason for New England. Shifting now finally to the Super Bowl. Kansas City, San Francisco. Your second guest on the show before the Super Bowl, Devin Nettles, our guy from the At the Bake podcast. By the way, just as an aside, you might be taking Devin's title. Devin used to call himself Mr. Runner-Up on the 8 o'clock spot live in the Grid Network Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. You may have gotten that, my friend, because you've been on the show 5 times and you've gotten the championship round every time, and you're 0-5 you've never gotten to the top. Your day is coming soon, my man. You and Devin have got like that Mr. Of course, Devin's won the show before, but yeah, we'll see what happens there. But listen, this 49ers and Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl, starting with San Francisco. So you've got the Brock Purdy story, Mr. Irrelevant. He's put together a fantastic regular season and 2, below average first half. In the case of Green Bay, below average 3.5 quarters before that final drive against Detroit. He was straight up bad in the first half and was fantastic money in the second half. Your thoughts on Brock Purdy? Because he's a very polarizing player, man, because you got people who love him and think he's amazing and think he's the MVP of the league. People who think he's no good game manager. I'm somewhere in the in-between area. I think he's a franchise quarterback. I don't think he's a top 10 guy. Your thoughts on Brock Purdy? Do you think he's capable of, going throw for throw with the best quarterback in the league, Patrick Mahomes, to win a championship for San Francisco?
Well, if we're talking about going throw for throw, obviously not. Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. I can't stand Patrick Mahomes. I can't stand the Chiefs for a number of reasons. Yeah. But I'll tell you this, I'm not stupid. Patrick Mahomes is unbelievable with what he can do with his arm. And so if we're talking throw for throw, obviously not. But that's why they went out and got Christian McCaffrey. That's why they have such a stellar offensive unit, with McCaffrey, Ayuk, and Debo, who I wanted Debo coming out of that 19 draft. Him and AJ Brown are my 2 guys. And then of course I get N'Keal friggin' Harry. Pain in my ass.
He was a bust, man. He was a bust. And I loved Debo at South Carolina too. Dude was a beast at South Carolina. He's done that in the leagues too, but go ahead.
Oh, yeah. But that's Shanahan's system isn't built like Reed, isn't built like, the systems where you have to throw 1,000 times, and I think that's kind of the beauty of, the Niners offense. It's more balanced, it's more well-rounded. Yet, this is why I disagreed with the nerds and why Detroit should have kicked the field goal and possibly gone up 17 points, because had they gone up 17 with 22 minutes remaining in the game, Shanahan's offense is vastly different, being down 3 scores with that little time remaining and the little possessions they have remaining. So that's why I think if we're talking throw for throw, no. But I think the unit that San Fran has is obviously head and shoulders above Kansas City. I would argue that the tight ends equal out. Right. And then if you look at running back, if you look at receivers, even the O-line, Kansas City is the how do I phrase this? Has the most holding penalties in the league. Mm-hmm. And so, every which way outside of tight end, which is a net neutral, in my opinion, and then quarterback, obviously, one up to Kansas City. Every other position, San Fran, without a doubt.
Only thing I would disagree with is the second. I think Kansas City's secondary is better than San Francisco's. I think Snead.
Oh, I was talking offense.
Yeah. Oh, offense. Yeah. Offense, I 100% agree. Now, and I do have questions about both offensive lines, but Kansas City, for the reasons you mentioned, the holding penalties. And I mean, listen, for as well as they were able to kind of, again, to use this term again, sort of game manage that game against Baltimore once they built a lead. I thought Baltimore's defensive line worked Kansas City's O-line, just like Buffalo did, just like a lot of teams had this season. And listen, San Francisco is one of the last defensive lines you want to face when you have that type of problem with Bosa, with Armstead, with Chase Young. So that's going to be a factor as well. For the Chiefs, obviously, this is an opportunity to get 3 Super Bowl titles in 5 years for this franchise to really kind of cement themselves as the successor to your team's dynasty, the New England Patriots, and really put together a special run here. The keys to the game for them, because obviously we know Mahomes is great. Everybody knows about him. For me, though, and I'll pass it to you after this, for me, though, this defense has not gotten the credit it's deserved all season long. They've been top 3 in virtually every category all season long. They have not given up 28 points all season long. This is by far the best defense in the Mahomes era, in large part due to the Tyreek trade and the picks that came from that. Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed, the linebacking core they have there, Bolton. Your thoughts, the keys to the game for Kansas City to knock off a roster that you and I agree, I think is better in San Francisco.
Yeah, well, I think that obviously Kansas City's secondary is going to be tough, especially with Steve Spagnuolo. I can never, I can obviously with what he's done to my team, I can never doubt Steve Spagnuolo in the playoffs. Going against Tom Brady. So I think the way he's going to disguise his secondary is, I think, going to take care of itself. Not to say that they're not going to be able to throw the ball on them, but I think that it's going to be hard for Brock to be able to drop back 30, 40 times and try to beat Kansas City by doing that. So obviously, I think the keys to the game for San Fran is to run the ball. And obviously the keys to the game for Kansas City will be to stop the run. Because while, again, Kansas City is a very good defense, they can get run all over. And under Shanahan's offense, that's a huge thing. That feeds right into what Kyle Shanahan wants to do. Now, the only question is, will he be able to do it or still call the right plays in the fourth quarter? See Super Bowl 51 and Super Bowl 54.
Yep.
But I think that's going to be really what comes down to is, how is the run defense? Again, Chris Jones, great player, but the linebacking crew hasn't been top notch. The D line is good, but again, Baltimore screwed themselves because they made Lamar Jackson a pocket passer rather than just run the freaking ball. They ran 8 times with their running backs.
6 times with their running backs.
6 times. Thank you. 6 times with their running backs. What are we doing? Lamar Jackson is not a pocket passer. And that was something I really want to talk about because it was just asinine. You have Detroit making dumb analytic decisions, nerd decisions. And then you have, Lamar Jackson, who's, again, I love Lamar. But there is a reason why I said on the 8 o'clock spot 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago that, you know what, even though if they won, that it should be put to bed, Lamar's, all the bad things against Lamar.
Sure.
They took Lamar out of his game, or Baltimore took Lamar out of his game. And that's why I think for Kansas City, they need to stop Christian McCaffrey. It's going to be the complete opposite of what Bill Belichick did to Thurman Thomas. He let Thurman Thomas run wild. Yeah, and that's what screwed Buffalo.
Right.
This is going to be the complete opposite. They need to shut down Christian McCaffrey. If they can't shut him down, the Niners are going to win.
So essentially kind of sort of dare Brock Purdy to beat you with his arm. And that's it really is a pick your poison type of situation. And listen, if you have to make the decision who's going to beat you, McCaffrey or Purdy, you're obviously going to choose the latter. And listen, McCaffrey's been the best back in football for the last couple of seasons, season and a half. I mean, really the majority of his career in some respects because of his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. Finally, and then I'll let you get out of here. So Devin, we can put this graphic up here. Devin had Kansas City 24-17, kind of 2 really good defenses, a little bit of a defensive battle to a certain extent. Tim, we're going to have you on the record here. Who do you got and what's your score?
It's funny. I haven't thought about it. The only thing I've thought about is the fact that I hate Kansas City. I hate Patrick Mahomes and I hate Travis Kelce. Like, that's the only thing I can think of, especially when Jason Kelce goes on and says he wants to bring back backyard baseball. Like, that's his retirement endeavor.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
I would love that. That's why I like Jason better than Travis. But
Backyard baseball, yeah.
Bring back backyard baseball, baby. I'm in. All right, to go into it, I think it has to be, if San Francisco is going to win, I think it's, you know what? I'm going to take San Francisco.
Okay.
And I'm going to go, it's going to be a little surprising. I'm going to go 28-17 Niners.
Ooh, a little bit of a, not blowout, but kind of a controlling win there.
I think that, again, if, with all the holding penalties against against Kansas City, now, again, I don't know how much the NFL wants to help the Chiefs, but, I'm not saying anything.
Yeah.
But no, I think that all the holding penalties against the Chiefs could be a factor, especially when you have Nick Bosa, Chase Young, Teron Armstead, like you mentioned earlier. If they can rush the passer, flush Mahomes out of the pocket, not even flush him out of the pocket, but just contain him. I think that's really going to be what it comes down to. Can the Niners get home?
Yeah, that could open the door potentially for a Nick Bosa Super Bowl MVP. I actually remember the very first Super Bowl I ever predicted on my show was this game 4 years ago, and I picked Bosa to win MVP, and obviously Mahomes and the Chiefs put together a magical last 6 minutes to steal that game. But it'll be a fun one for sure. Tim, Boston Sports Summit, everybody check it out on the Grid Network. When does your show go live, Tim?
Show goes live Wednesdays at 7 p.m.
All right, everybody check it out. Tim Barnard, the Boston Sports Summit podcast. Very excited to have you as a part of the Grid Network. Mr. Runner-Up, your day is coming. You're going to win the 8 o'clock spot one of these days, my man. You're close. You're very close. But I appreciate you coming on, my man.
Hey, I appreciate you having me. It was a blast. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Have a good one.
You too, man.
Tim Barnard, host of the Boston Sports Summit podcast. Very excited to have him on the show, as always. I'm trying to work on this graphic and get his score up here because I want to have all of our scores from all of our guests before I make my final prediction going into. I guess we could just have that ready. No, actually, hold on. I might be able to get this on the show before we get out of here. Let's see what we got. Yeah, that looks good. Well, let's see. Let's make one little editing a graphic right here on the spot, live on Carving It Up. See if we can get this out here. So so far, let's see, last year, the guests, I think I had 6 guests on Carving It Up live last year, and all 6 picked Kansas City, including myself, to beat Philadelphia. We did not have a single person on the show pick the Philadelphia Eagles. I think we've got the graphic ready to go right now. Do we have it? This is it right here. So it's pulling up. And then we'll do our all-star topic and then get out of here. Okay, here we go. Yep, there we go. So there you go. Tim, 28-17 San Francisco, and Devin, 24-17 Chiefs. So there you go. We got 2 great Super Bowl predictions by those 2. So very excited game. So thank goodness we got more diversity in the picks than we did a year ago. Again, listen, I hate the Eagles just like everybody else, but it was like I needed somebody to pick Philadelphia, but everybody went Kansas City. They were correct, obviously. And then now this year we got 1-1. So we will see what happens over the next week. Before we get out here super fast, the NBA All-Star reserves were announced last night. Real quick, it looks like I got a comment. Yeah, Tim in the comments. Thanks for having me on. Thank you, Tim, for coming on. Very excited to have you as a part of the Grid Network. And everybody check out Boston Sports Summit Wednesday nights at 7 Eastern at 4 Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Second. Okay. Lost connection to my mic there for a second. I think I may sound very different through the audio. No, I think I sound good. Some reason it disconnected. But yes, rest in peace, Carl Weathers. Yeah, that broke earlier today. That was sucked to see. Very accomplished actor. Apollo Creed, as you mentioned, he was in some other movies. I know he was in, I'm a big Star Wars guy. He was in The Mandalorian on Disney Plus. And so definitely has passed away at the age of 76. So a huge loss to the acting community, to other communities regarding the acting business, like in the sports industry, in Star Wars and other projects. So definitely a massive loss, and may Carl Weathers rest in peace. No question about that. But shifting to the NBA All-Star game. So the reserves were announced last night. If I could pull up the graphic here, because they announced it last night on Inside the NBA. They've already announced the starters, and What do we have here? Okay, so for the Western Conference, the starters are Luka Doncic, Kevin Durant, SGA, LeBron, and Jokic. And their reserves are Book, Steph, AD, Anthony Edwards, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Karl Anthony Towns. Out east, the starters are Giannis, Embiid, Haliburton, Lillard, Tatum, with the reserves being Bam, Paolo Banchero. Shout out to my man Paolo Banchero. I love that guy. Jaylen Brown, Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Maxey, Donovan Mitchell, and Julius Randle. And so for the East, by the way, it looks like they're going to miss at least two of those guys because Embiid's going to be out for a few weeks. He's not going to be ready to go for the All-Star game. And Julius Randle suffered a shoulder injury. He's likely going to miss the All-Star game. And then out west, right now, knock on wood, looks like everybody's pretty much healthy and ready to go. We'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. But I'm just looking right now. The Pistons are up 20-6 on the Clippers. We could have a little something here. Clippers being the Clippers type of Friday night. But listen, out east, I thought a major snub, in my humble opinion, was I thought Trae Young should have made it. I thought Trae Young should have made the All-Star game. You talk about a guy in Trae Young who is a consistent double-double guy in the sense that he always gets up to, do we have his numbers, Trae Young? Trae Young this season is averaging 27 and 11. Like that's I get the shooting splits aren't terribly efficient. He's only shooting about 43% from the field, but 27 and 11 is 27-11. He's a less efficient Tyrese Haliburton. He should make the All-Star game in place of an Embiid or of a Julius Randle. The only thing they'll put him in it, but the only reason he may not get a ton of playing time is because those are two bigs. And Trae Young, one of the smallest players, and therefore one of the worst defensive players in the All-Star game. So that could come back to bite him unless he just gets on some hot shooting streak. I can see Trae Young as a potential replacement in the All-Star game. Looking down the list, I also could see them potentially getting Jimmy Butler an All-Star spot. Listen, 21 points per game, about shooting almost 50% from the field. Maybe an All-Star replacement for Joel Embiid. Maybe a Derek White makes it. Again, I know I'm talking about only guards, but like those are kind of the snubs everybody's talking about out east. Out west, listen, nobody's ever going to accuse me of being a massive Sacramento Kings guy. I don't hate the Kings. It's not by any stretch of the imagination. It's far from a rivalry with Golden State. But they pushed us in the first round last year to the brink. It took a Steph Curry 50-piece to win that series for my Warriors. And then even this year, the last two Warriors-Kings games, the Kings have won both games by combined 2 points. So like they have both been down the wire. The fantastic matchups. The Kings play a very similar brand to Golden State. So you have strength on strength, weakness on weakness, which makes for some fun matchups. How De'Aaron Fox did not make the All-Star game is beyond me. Man's averaging 27, 4, and 5, about 46, 47% from the field, 38% from three. How does De'Aaron Fox not make the All-Star game? It's nothing against Cat. I know a lot of people argued Sabonis over Cat. I'll take Cat over Sabonis any day of the week. I'm not a big Sabonis guy. Give me De'Aaron Fox in the All-Star. How he doesn't make it is crazy. And again, I'm talking a lot of guards. It's guard heavy, but man, like that's one that he feels like a type of dude because of the new Kobe rules in the NBA All-Star game that's been in place since 2020, the new Kobe rules. De'Aaron Fox, the type of guy that you can plug in there, get a bucket. He's one of the fast. Fox is one of the most appropriate last names I've ever seen for an NBA player because he's one of the quickest and twitchiest, smaller players in the league, guards. And so I thought De'Aaron Fox should have got in. But I could see Trae Young, Jimmy Butler getting the All-Star game in place of Embiid and in place of Julius Randle. Other than that, and by the way, I know a lot of folks and a lot of my fellow Warriors fans were mad about Steph Curry not being All-Star starter. Usually when it comes to Steph, quote-unquote, disrespect, I'm on the train of one of the most underappreciated superstars in the history of the game. In this instance, I didn't have an issue with him not being a starter. Luka and SGA have been objectively better. You look at Steph Curry's numbers this year, if we can pull them up, because Steph's been fantastic. And by the way, my Warriors played the Grizzlies in just 30 minutes. But Steph's averaging 27 points per game, leading the league by a mile in three-point shooting, and is, by the way, shooting 93% from the line. So Steph, relatively efficient in that regard. But pull up Luka's numbers. Do we have Luka? By the way, Luka has a 70-point game, a 73-point game, mind you, on his resume this season. Where are the Dallas Mavericks? Okay, there's Dallas. Luka Doncic. If we could pull up his stats here. Again, I mentioned with Steph, 27, 5, and 5. Or 27, 4, and 5, I believe. Luka's averaging 34, 8, 9 on more efficient shooting. So Luka has been absolutely better than Steph. And I'm a big Shea guy in Oklahoma City. I think Shea, Gilgeous-Alexander, has been better than Steph Curry this season. If we can pull up his statistics on the season. Where's Oklahoma City? I cannot find the Thunder, and I cannot find SGA. Okay, there's the Thunder. So Thunder, again, Steph's averaging 27, 4, and 5. Luka's averaging 34, 8, and 9. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is averaging 31, 5, and 6 on more fit. He's shooting 54.5% for the field. He's a bigger guard, but still, as a guard, as a perimeter player who could score down low. So, yes, they both should have been all-star starters over Steph, in my humble opinion. I'm a huge Steph guy. Like, if Steph had missed the all-star game, that'd have been insanity, but there you go. So, yeah, that's my only beef. It's amazing how many guys we look and we're like, how are they not all-stars? How is he not an all-star? How is he not an all-star? Just goes to show you. I know it gets under people's skin. People don't like to hear this. This is the most talented since the 1980s. 80s were one of the most talented decades in NBA history. Crazy. I mean, you had Magic, you had Bird, you had Dr. J, you had MJ. You had all these guys in the 80s. 90s, it was MJ. You had Chuck, Stockton Malone, Reggie. Those guys, obviously outside of Jordan and Charles Barkley as well, those guys simply were not on the levels of the guys in the 80s. This is one of the most talented decades I can remember in the NBA. It's more international. It's the older guys. We have more great old players than we ever have in the history game. LeBron, Steph, KD, all three very, very worthy all-stars. So it'll be a fun all-star game in Indiana. I'm looking forward to, more than anything, the Steph Sabrina Ionescu 3-point shoot off. I think it's gonna be a blast. And Sabrina wants to shoot. Y'all know I've been talking about Sabrina Ionescu on Carving It Up Live since she was in college at Oregon. I'm a huge fan of her game. But she said she wants to shoot from the 3-point line in the NBA. If she wants to take that on, more power to her. Because in her 3-point contest of the WNBA, she broke the all-time 3-point contest points record, 37 points she got in that. She went 25 for 27. I think that was the number, 25 of 27 in the 3-point contest, facing obviously now the greatest shooter that God ever created, as Stephen A. Smith says, in Steph Curry. So that'll be a fun matchup. I'm looking forward to that. I'd like to see a Steph Curry, Caitlin Clark shoot off. That would be fun. But maybe we'll get that in future All-Star games. We'll see. But that said, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. Shout out to Tim Barnard, Boston Sports Summit. Check his show out every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time, live on the Grid Network. Of course, be sure to like, share, comment, and take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button right down there. Helps the channel grow exponentially. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by Super Bowl 58. So if you have subscribed, thank you so much. Appreciate your support. Tell your friends about it. Please tell your family about it. Tell everybody you know about Carving Up Live. We can grow the channel, grow the family, and grow the overall product. If you have not subscribed, just takes a couple seconds. Just a couple seconds. Down there, hit that big red subscribe button. Helps the channel grow exponentially. And my teammate on the Grid Network is Tim Barnard. We have many other teammates. So that said, go subscribe to the Grid Network. That's GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere you get your favorite podcast, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, any and everywhere that you get your favorite podcast. It is so weird not to have football this weekend. And the Pro Bowl flag football game does not count. It does not count. Super Bowl next week. A lot of Super Bowl talk, some NBA trade deadline talk. It'll be a very eventful week. Looking forward to it. We will see you then. Stay safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health. And please, I beg of you, contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America. We've got to address this problem. It's one that is really, really near and dear to my heart, and one that we have to address ASAP. This is a big one. So let's do our part as citizens of this great country. I'll see y'all on Monday. A lot of Super Bowl talk. More guests coming on Carving Up Live. We'll see you soon. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. I'm pulling for Peyton, though, in the Pro Bowl games.